We're going to cover in this video medical malpractice cases. And I want to stress this to you. Medical malpractice cases are extremely challenging and you need an attorney. You can't handle a medical malpractice case without a lawyer. So I want to stress this. This is an overview. So if you or a loved one has had a medical malpractice type incident, by watching this, it'll give you an overview and help educate you. One of the things that I plan on doing with this video is when I represent somebody in a medical malpractice case and they haven't seen it yet, to go watch this video. So this will help you decide what the issues might be in your case. So when you call me, you know exactly what we're going to need. One of the things I want to stress in a medical malpractice case is it's all about negligence. A medical malpractice basically means negligence. What does negligence mean in a medical malpractice case? It means the deviation in the standard of care of a medical provider in the same or similar circumstance. What does that mean? What would an emergency room doctor do if he's presented with that set of facts? And it's almost like what 99% of the doctors in America would do under that circumstance. And I want you to know that if the doctor does what 99% of the doctors would do under that circumstance, it's not medical malpractice. One of the examples I like to use is this, is if you have a fever, the standard of care is to give an antipyretic drug or Tylenol, and you don't give them Tylenol, that would be malpractice. A very simpleton example, but that's what we're talking about. What did they, and I ask every person who calls me about one of these simple questions. What did they fail to do, or what did they do that they shouldn't have done? It's one or the other. What did they fail to do? They should have done this, they should have done that. Or what did they do that they shouldn't have done? They did a surgery that I didn't need. Right there sums up the basis of a medical malpractice claim. And again, you have to prove this through expert witnesses, doctors, based upon a reasonable degree of medical probability, which means greater than 50% more likely than not. Not possible. People say, well, is it possible? No, 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 no. Reasonable degree of medical probability. It's not possibility. You must have an expert in the same field. For example, let's say you're saying a cardiologist screwed up. Well, it's not very good, although Kentucky's pretty liberal with this. Ohio's not. Ohio, you have to have an affidavit from an expert witness in that field that is an active doctor before you file the lawsuit. You have to have that affidavit. So it's put up or shut up. But you need to have a field. If you're going after a cardiologist, you need to have a cardiologist on your side. You must prove the negligence caused the harm or injury. I get a call like this. Bulldog, the doctor screwed up and gave me morphine and I'm allergic to morphine. Did anything bad happen? Nah, I got a little queasy, that's all. No case. Why? Was it negligent to give you a drug you were allergic to? Of course. But did it cause any harm or injury? Nebulous. And by the way, you have to have a severe harm or injury to pursue a medical malpractice cases, because I will be spending $50,000 to $100,000 of my cash trying to pursue justice for you. So it has to be a serious case. Damages. What are you entitled to in damages? You're entitled to your medical bills, your lost income, and pain and suffering. I want to stress this right now. One of the most difficult things to tell clients is if you are over 70 years old, and there's exceptions to this, and you're already retired and you have a medical malpractice incident, think about it. Medical bills are going to be covered by Medicare. You don't have lost income. And your pain and suffering, jurors look at senior citizens, and I'm ashamed to say this, and they say, well, you know, they were already old. That's not me talking. That's just what I've gotten from juries and from doing this. If you're a young person and suffer a catastrophic injury, for example, the most severe damages cases are like cerebral palsy, you know, where you have a brain injury the rest of your life, or you lose an arm or a leg or something like that. Severe medical bills. I always say that probably the best medical malpractice case would be where somebody who was the son or daughter of very wealthy people that had medical degrees and their future income was going to be huge, and they're permanently disabled and they're never even going to go to school. But you need to have severe damages. If somebody unfortunately dies, and in medical malpractice cases, this happens a lot. I think there's like 90,000 people die a year in America for medical mistakes. You have to set up an estate. You have to get the will, bring the will to us. Whoever is supposed to be appointed the executor will be the point person on pursuing the claim. Children under 18, you have to go to court and get appointed a guardian. Even though you're the mom and dad of a child, you have to get the court appoint you as a guardian so you can pursue that case. Also, if the child is under 18 years old, they have what's called a loss of consortium claim. And if a parent dies, now just think about this, if a parent dies and a child is 8 years old, that child has a consortium claim for the loss of love and affection and support that they lost because their parent died. But guess what? If you're 19, no claim. Just think about it. If you're 17, you can get damages, but if you're 19, you can't. I think the law should be changed that all parents and all children should have a claim, at least to some extent, for the loss. Because if you lose a parent and you're 21, your grief is just as great as if you're 16. That's just my viewpoint. Statute of limitations. The statute of limitations in a medical malpractice case is very, very important. I can't believe the number of people that call me up and they say, well, I thought it was 2 years. It's 1 year in Kentucky and Ohio from the time you knew or should have known there was malpractice. Let's say the doctor screws up a surgery, but you don't realize it until 3 years later when they find out they left a sponge in you. That is when it starts. When you knew or should have known something was wrong. And you don't get the lollygag. You don't get to say, well, maybe something's wrong. As soon as you think something could be wrong, go find a lawyer. Because the lawsuit has to be filed within 1 year of when you knew or should have known. And we have to research the medical records, get an expert, and do all that. In Ohio, they have a special provision, which I hate, where you can file or send a letter, a certified letter, to all the people you're going to sue, and it extends it 6 months. Informed consent. What this is besides just being negligent, you can bring a claim for lack of informed consent of known risks. The doctor, for example, doing surgery has to tell you, these are the known risks of this procedure. And if something bad happens and they didn't tell you what that known risk is. I won a case once on a woman that was in her 50s, late 50s. She had to wait till her children all got out of school. She raised her kids on her own, became a licensed nurse. And this doctor, this surgeon, did a sinus surgery and did not warn her that there was a possible cutting of what's called the medial rectus muscle in the eye that controls the eye being able to go right and left, and he cut it. The jury did not find the doctor liable based upon negligence, but the fact that he failed to warn her of that happening. It's called informed consent. And by the way, the doctors are going to have you, in hospitals, are going to have you sign these big, broad consent things to, quote unquote, protect them, which is understandable because let me tell you something. One of the defenses in a medical malpractice case is sometimes just things happen. I mean, nobody's fault. They just happen. Stuff happens. There's the defense. How you like that for timing? Medical malpractice insurance. Most doctors, hospitals, and nurses are covered by medical malpractice insurance. So they will hire the lawyer that defends them. If you ever are on a jury in a medical malpractice case, trust me, the lawyer sitting there with them, chances are from the insurance company. And guess what? The doctors have a provision usually in their policy that they have to agree to settle the case. Even if the insurance company says, oh my God, this doctor screwed up, we want to settle this case. The doctor has to consent to settle that case. Expenses and costs. The expenses and costs for both sides of these cases is extraordinary. Expert witnesses, try hiring a neurosurgeon to support your neurology medical malpractice case. It's unbelievable. Extremely expensive. Risks. Unbelievable risks in medical malpractice cases. Generally, the public supports hospitals, doctors, and nurses as they should because of the wonderful things that they do and the great care that they provide us. I will tell you this, a very good medical malpractice case is one that'll settle. In Kentucky and Ohio, 90% of the cases that don't settle and go to trial are won by the defense. I'm proud to say that my record's better than that. I probably have won 30 or 40% of the ones that have actually gone to trial. Good cases settle. Settlement. I can tell you right now, you want your case to be so good, at some point in time they'll settle. Let me tell you what usually happens in a medical malpractice case. Everybody blames the plaintiff's lawyer for driving up the case. Even in a really good medical malpractice case, the doctor doesn't want to admit he was wrong, the hospital doesn't want to admit they're wrong, the nurse doesn't want to admit they're wrong, and guess what? They will fight you and take your depositions and spend 2 years making sure the lawyer's getting paid, the lawyer's going to be paid, and then miraculously, and this is my experience, that only when you have a trial date will they finally want to settle your case. They will delay it, delay it, delay it. Another reason why on these cases we take them on a contingency of 40%, more than a regular car accident case, because there's great risk involved. Mediation is a way for the parties to get together with an independent person and see if they can work out the difference. A good case will settle at mediation. Arbitration is when there's binding arbitration in front of a judge. You present the case and you let somebody, it can be binding or not binding actually, decide the case. A trial. Medical malpractice cases are extremely challenging to try. You got to bring in expert witnesses from out of town, or you have them on videotape. You got to present your case to the jury. Sometimes you see very seriously injured people in the courtroom. Very challenging. I've tried a lot of these cases. The jury. Jurors. You have to be able to prove your case beyond the preponderance of the evidence, which has tipped the scales. But it's really worse than that. Jurors generally come in with a preconceived notion. Doctors, nurses, and hospitals are good. Prove that this is a really bad case. And you know what? I agree with that. I'm one of the few plaintiffs' attorneys that I know that supports medical malpractice reform merely because I think the overall American economy is good. And that would help it. And let me tell you something. The reality is, there's not very many medical malpractice cases that are settled or won every year for millions and millions of dollars. New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, the big cities, in the tri-state, juries aren't handing out multi-million-dollar medical malpractice awards every day. The appeal time usually takes years. Contingency fee, I've already explained. National Data Bank, this is something interesting. When there is a settlement or a verdict against a doctor or a nurse, that goes into what's called the National Data Bank. They guard that. Why? Because if they leave one hospital and go to another hospital, they check them out. Public opinion of malpractice cases, I've already explained that. The public doesn't like them, folks. And there's been a pounding the last 20 years about driving up medical malpractice insurance premiums and driving doctors out of the practice and all of that. So nobody, and by the way, let me tell you something about this too. It amazes me. People don't like medical malpractice cases until something happens to them. Dick Roding, who was a state senator in Northern Kentucky, who I ran his first campaign, he didn't like medical malpractice cases. And I'm talking to him one day in my office. And he was a pharmaceutical sales rep before he became a state senator. And his wife and him loved to golf all the time. And I'm sitting there talking to Dick Roding, and I say, Dick, what if a doctor screwed up and Nancy lost one of her legs and she couldn't go golfing with you anymore? Would you want to sue him? Well, of course. In other words, when it happens to you, everybody, I have clients come to me, Mr. Deters, Bulldog, I don't like to sue people, and I'm not the suing kind, but I'm upset. When it happens to you, it's a totally different story. Tort reform, I've already said I support it for the greater good. So there you have it. Medical malpractice cases are very challenging. I'm proud to represent people that are injured. And let me tell you something else too. All the defense attorneys around town that handle medical malpractice defense, I'm going to give them a big compliment. They're the best lawyers in the tri-state. The lawyers that defend doctors and hospitals are the best. Makes it all the more challenging, but they're a great group of lawyers to work with. A lot of mutual respect. They know how hard my job is. I respect them. When I sue a doctor and I sue a nurse, and by the way, nurses are rarely named individually or hospital, it's not personal. I got to go to hospitals. My family has to go to doctors. My fraternity brother is a doctor, thank goodness. But my wife has an OBGYN group. My daughters, my secretary. There's an OBGYN group in northern Kentucky that will never be sued by me because they're my wife's. But the bottom line is that I need to go to doctors. I respect doctors. The reason why people become lawyers are not smart enough to become doctors. It's never personal. But God forbid if through negligence a hospital does something that causes the death or severe injury of your loved one. Why should they not be held accountable? And as you know, if you're watching this video, it happens. It happens more than what you think it happens. Because you know what happens? Something bad, something goes wrong, and nobody ever knows about it. It gets covered up, it's just silent, everybody holds their breath, and nobody ever knows about it. Let me tell you something else that happens. There are sometimes cover-ups in medical records. We have experts that can review medical records to determine that. I got a case right now in a nursing home where a nurse saved the medical record, just like in the movie The Verdict. And then we requested the medical records, we can prove they changed the medical record. So if your loved one's in a nursing home or in a hospital or having a birth, we do a lot of baby cases where something goes wrong in the birth. Like for example, if your loved one, you have a viable baby, and your daughter has a viable baby, and something's going on and they can take that baby by cesarean and the mom and baby are safe, and because it's okay, and they put that off and then the baby dies, what human being on the face of the earth wouldn't want some justice for that? So if a tragedy befalls you, and I hope it never does, please call me. I want to stress this. You can email me at eric@ericdeters.com. You can text me at 859-250-2527. I keep my BlackBerry with me. All of that comes to me. And I just want to say that in the tri-state area, it seems like almost any lawyer can handle a criminal case or a personal injury case. I would say in northern Kentucky, there's probably only 5 or 6 of us that do a lot of medical malpractice work because of the challenging. There's only so many lawyers that do it, and even fewer that do it very well. So I hope you never need me, but if you do, please contact me, and I promise to fight for you to get the justice that you and your family deserve. Thank you very much.